in case you are curious about the jacket, there's no heat in my car, and I'm freezing. Hello, welcome back to my channel. I'm like warming my hands on my tea. I feel like this has nothing to do with what we're about to talk about, but it seems that I always have something warm to drink in my sit-down videos, whether I'm in my car or my house or wherever I am. I always have something warm to drink, and I've had people comment in the past that like, it's super cozy, it's super fun, it's nice that I have this hot drink. And I know there are some other booktubers who do like the Sips Be or Sips By unboxing, however you pronounce it, the tea box unboxing, and tea and book recommendations. So if you guys want, I can tell you what I'm drinking in my videos. Today it's a honey vanilla chamomile blend from Celestial Seasonings, and it's effing delightful, let me tell you. I'm really enjoying it. Usually I'm drinking coffee, but today it's tea. Okay, let's get into the video, shall we? So I can get out of my car and stop freezing my ass off. In my last sit-down video, in my October wrap-up, I promised you guys a video detailing my experience rereading the Twilight series and my review of it now, 10 years after I read it the first time, and today I am here to deliver on that promise. It doesn't really need to be said that we, as a society, hate teenage girls and everything that they stand for and enjoy, but I'm gonna say it anyway. We, as a society, hate teenage girls and everything that they stand for and enjoy. This was not a fact that I had in mind or was even aware of the first time I read the Twilight series. Back then it was kind of like, this is my life. Here's a book about vampires. But having this girl hate phenomenon in mind when I reread the series this past October really made me think about how the Twilight saga can really positively impact your feminist identity and how the negative rhetoric surrounding the Twilight saga over the past, how many years? 15 years? Almost 15 years that the books have been out. How that negative rhetoric has taken girl hate within society to a whole nother level through what I like to call the Bella Swan phenomenon, in which girls and women are put down for not being feminist enough, for not being masculine enough in their feminism and in their femininity, which doesn't make sense when you think about it logically, but we as a society are not logical. We're a very emotional species. Wow! My Capricorn is really showing, in which girls and women are put down for doing the exact same thing that others are praised for, in which we are pitted against one another, and in which certain brands of feminism get stomped out, which is exactly the wrong way to do feminism. But we'll get into it. We'll get into it in a minute. So for starters, I want to look at, going all the way back, I want to look at how Twilight, coming into the literary scene in 2005, and then blowing up again in 2008 with the movies, how Twilight changed the literary scene and changed lives through the literary scene. Around the time that Twilight came out, the biggest books for adolescents, teens, both male and female, were the Harry Potter series and the Percy Jackson series. And while these books are amazing and carry their own set of morals and lessons and positive attributes to impart onto young readers, that's not what we're here to talk about. That is a discussion for another video, and for now I want to look at how these books, as well as many other books that were targeted at adolescents and young people, were mostly about boys and written for boys and even marketed towards boys. J.K. Rowling wasn't allowed to write under the name Joanne because her publishers were afraid that a female feminine name on a book would alienate a male audience. Regardless of the content of the book, regardless of what it was about, a female author, a female named author, from a marketing standpoint, inherently alienates a male audience. It's harder to sell a girl book than it is to sell just a book, because boy books don't exist. And even the female characters in these books, and even the books written about girls, they were always girls who exhibited some kind of otherness, and these girls that we were meant to look up to were also painted in such a way that they were not like other girls. For example, Alana in the Song of the Lioness series by Tamora Pierce, which I read and adored when I was in middle school. The main character switches places with her twin brother and goes off to learn how to become a knight, pretends to be a boy, and learns how to become a knight. And it was so cool, and it was so badass, but it was nothing like what me or any of my friends were experiencing at the same age. Obviously, my friends and I also don't live in a high fantasy, but what I'm trying to say is that Alana held many attributes and many good qualities that just were not the same as the qualities and attributes that I personally prescribed to myself. It was very difficult for me to see myself in her in the more obvious ways. It's very easy to put a blanket term like strong or independent on a character and say, you are like her because you are strong and independent. But when you're not making those smaller connections, it's more difficult to relate, and therefore more difficult to achieve being like this role model character, like Alana, or Hermione, or Annabeth Chase. Enter Twilight. Now, I was only 9 in 2005 when Twilight first hit the bookstores and the literary scene, so I was a tad young for it, and I was not reading it at that point, but by the time I was 12, in the fall of 2008, my friends and I were swapping books in the cafeteria, passing around so-and-so's copy, and oh, she hasn't read it yet, so nobody spoil anything. We devoured that entire series in a matter of weeks, and got very hyped for the movies, let me tell ya. Twilight revolutionized young adult literature. It introduced us to romance. It was one of the first female-led, female-casted, written by a woman books series that I had ever read, and in introducing us to romance, it validated the cravings that we were having for those kinds of stories and filled the hole left by the lack of romance in our own lives, because we were 12 and we wanted a boyfriend, even though we wouldn't have known what to do with one if we had one. But Twilight didn't just give us romance. Oh no. Twilight went above and beyond. Twilight gave us the empowered, incredulous, attainable female lead that is Bella Swan. Bella Swan gets criticized for being a damsel in distress, for always needing to be rescued by the men in her life, but if we look closely enough to actually read the books, we can see that this passive character is actually quite active and performs her own heroic deeds on a daily basis, and exhibits various levels of heroism throughout the series. For starters, Bella is highly empowered. She starts off this novel, this series of novels, with little to no power over her life. She's a 17-year-old girl who's just moved to a new town where she knows nobody. Her father is the chief of police, so even if she could manage to find any trouble in this bumfuck nowhere town, cop dad's not gonna be cool with that, is he? And on top of all this, she gets sucked into the paranormal world of vampires and werewolves, and she is the only human there. She's weak. She's fragile. She's not a damsel, she's just breakable, because these vampires and werewolves are vampires and werewolves. They're inherently, by nature, bigger, faster, and stronger than she is. And the whole protect Bella, save Bella mindset actually comes from the men, not from Bella herself, and is all surrounding the fact, not that she's a girl, but that she's a human. She starts off with little to no power, but she decides what she wants, she makes decisions for herself, and then she negotiates her way into getting those things that she wants, and negotiates her way into a position of power. She compounds this power, and at the end of the series, we see that she is actually the most powerful of all the vampires. Sex with a vampire? Got it. Becoming a vampire? Got it. Keeping her relationship with her parents post-vampire transformation? Got it. Creepy CGI baby? Oh, you know she got it. A best guy friend who continues to be her friend and accepts the fact that she's in love with somebody else? Got it. Can you tell Jacob Black gave me unrealistic expectations? Bitter! I'm bitter. My point is, Bella uses what little power she does have, builds on it, gets what she wants, negotiates and manipulates and monopolizes. Does she monopolize? I'm just spewing words now. She negotiates to what she wants and ends up the most powerful character in the series, with the added additional vampire power of what's being known as a shield. I'm talking too fast. I'm very invested in this topic, compounded with the added power of being what's known as a shield. Which brings me to my next point. Bella is, by nature, a protector and a defender. The argument that Bella is constantly being saved by the men in her life is, in my personal humble opinion, null and void, because for as many times as she is saved by men, she saves men and women. She's constantly protecting the people in her life, saving them, and doing so in literally whatever way she can. She uses every weapon in her minuscule human arsenal, and she wields those weapons with power and with strength, and she wins shit. Her vampire shield power power that she uses to defend her entire ass coven with just her mind is born out of the fact that she is a naturally protective person, and that she will do whatever it takes to protect those that she cares about. And she does this in small ways, cleaning and cooking and doing laundry for her dad so that he doesn't, starve to death and live in a dirty man cave living through sad boy hours all the time. In book 1, when Mike asks her to the dance, she not only lets him down easy, she actually suggests that he asks her friend Jessica, who has a thing for him. And this is such a small and subtle act of kindness, but it also exemplifies the girl-on-girl support that we don't see often enough, either in fiction or in real life. In Eclipse, she saves Angela from carpal tunnel syndrome by helping her write out all of her graduation notices, addressing envelopes for an entire fucking afternoon. She didn't have to do that, but she wanted to be helpful, and you know what? That is something that any reader of Twilight could potentially do at some point in their life. Attainability. But I'll get to that in a minute. I'm still talking about empowered and protective. In Twilight, the first book, she goes off to this ballet studio in Phoenix to meet up with James, knowing that she's facing death, but going alone in the hopes of rescuing her mother. In New Moon, she flies all the way to Italy to save the boy who broke her heart from self-destruction. In Eclipse, she literally stabs herself when Edward and Seth are fighting against Victoria and her newborn vampire boy toy, whose name escapes me. When it looks like Edward and Seth may be on the losing end of this fight, Bella cuts herself with a rock and bleeds to distract Victoria and her boy toy. In the same way that Edward's vampire body is used as a weapon so much throughout the series, Bella uses her own body, which is thought of as weak and fragile and breakable and not to be damaged, and uses it as a weapon to save her friend and her boyfriend, to help them win their fight. I'm sorry, explain to me how she's a damsel in distress, because I really don't see it. And of course, as I said before, all of these acts of heroism culminate in Breaking Dawn, when she becomes a vampire and realizes she has this shield power that she can use to defend not only herself, but her whole family and all of her friends from the Volturi. As for arguments that Bella is a passive character, literally 70% of the plot of Eclipse is just Bella running away from Edward so that she can go and hang out with Jacob because that's what she wants to do and fuck her boyfriend's rules. And then punching Jacob in the face because he took a different kind of autonomy away from her. Also breaking curfew and breaking the rules that Charlie has set for her grounding because she literally took off to Italy for 3 fucking days. But for those who would continue to shit on Bella for being a damsel or being passive, I would just like to pose the question, what would Prince Charming have for occupation if not to awaken the Sleeping Beauty? And these are just a few ways in which Bella is strong and empowered, but there's also a lot to be said for her attainability, because Bella is the everywoman. And this is where I'm going to start to talk about some of the comparisons that have been made for Bella and the rhetoric surrounding Bella and how that has impacted my feminist growth and how I think it has gone hand in hand with the cultural feminist growth of the past decade. Not to say that the rhetoric surrounding Twilight has caused this issue, but I do think there's a correlation. I do think they go hand in hand. So, here we go. Bella is the everywoman. Now, she's been accused of being a Mary Sue, which, if you don't know what that is, a Mary Sue is a term coined to describe a character who is physically flawless, perfect in every way, but also lacks a personality. And it's commonly confused with a self-insert character, which is what Bella is. Because she's not perfect, she never claims to be perfect, and the only people in the entire series who in any way consider her to be perfect are Edward and Jacob. And they're both obsessed with her. Now, I think this comparison comes from the fact that the Mary Sue has no personality, and the self-insert character has only just enough personality to make them relatable to the reader. It's a tool used so that the author and the reader can insert themselves into the character, effectively creating and or becoming the character in a sense. You care about Bella because you created Bella. You are Bella. Bella is the everywoman, which means comparing her to characters like Hermione Granger and Katniss Everdeen, who she is very often compared to in a negative sense, is kind of not fair, if I'm being totally honest. And a lot of the things things that these characters of Hermione and Katniss are praised for, Bella's kind of shit on for. Hermione is bookish and studious and a little bit of a know-it-all, but she uses her power to help her friends. Well, Bella does exactly the same thing, but Hermione does it in a world of war-torn magic, and Bella does it in high school. Hermione is a warrior princess because she's dueling with Death Eaters, but when Bella uses her mind to protect her family and avoid bloodshed, she's boring. Similarly, we can compare her to Katniss Everdeen. They're both providers, they're both protectors. But Katniss provides for her family in a more masculine sense, going out and hunting for food, selling meat on the black market, providing for her family that way. Bella does it by going to the grocery store, because it's the 21st century and she doesn't live in a dystopian universe. But providing for her family in that sense makes her domestic and therefore a bad feminist? But the thing is, shitting on the every woman character makes it okay to shit on every woman. I feel like the negative rhetoric surrounding Twilight and the fact that Bella is so often compared in a negative sense to unattainable female characters, and female characters who are, in a sense, not like other girls, goes hand in hand with the not like other girls rhetoric that many of us experienced in high school. And I'll be the first to admit, I was one of those girls. I did not want to be friends with other girls because other girls were too much drama, and it was just easier to be friends with the boys. But the time in my life when I was exhibiting that attitude was also the time in my life when I was pretending I hadn't enjoyed Twilight, and when I was shitting on Bella too. But in the past year and a half, I've undergone my own personal feminist reawakening in which I've made some very strong connections with other women, forming bonds and friendships. Female friendships are so fucking important. And thinking about how much I and everybody else hated Bella Swan when I was in high school, and how much I and all of the girls that I went to high school with and associated with hated each other at the same time, I just can't help but get mad at society, at myself. And I feel like I'm going off on a tangent here now, but I'm just gonna wrap it up saying this is the Bella Swan phenomenon. The hating on the every woman, the hating on inherent femininity, or even non-inherent femininity, and just chosen and expressed femininity, rather than praising the every woman for who she is. Who is you?
Who are you? I am you. I am me. No, sir, you are you.
I need to sign off before I start ranting even more about feminism, because I'm just gonna get really heated, and I don't have time for that. Thank you so much for watching this video. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much for sitting with me through all of this. Let me know down in the comments what you thought, if you agree with the points I made, if you disagree, let's have a discussion, let's talk about it. I can tell you why you're wrong. I'm kidding. Your point is probably valid. Thank you so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, feel free to give it a thumbs up and hit that there subscribe button. I love you guys so much, and I want to hear what you have to say, so please do leave me a comment or shoot me a message over on social media. All my links are down below, and I will catch y'all on the flip side. Peace out, Brussels sprouts!